guys and gals, and welcome to another Tips and Tricks Thursdays from the team here at BlenderTech.com. If you enjoy it or learn something from the video, consider liking it and consider subscribing for more Blender, Unity 3D, coding, and all sorts of other CG related videos. Lastly, don't forget our motto, create your way. So obviously with the release of Blender 2.73, I will be using that, and I think I'm going to be focusing on a lot of its features. But anyways, after a 2-week hiatus from Tips and Tricks Thursdays due to the holidays, I'm back with a hopefully medium length video full of some usually neat and useful ideas and info. And again, like I said, with the release of 2.73 just today, changed how I had this video planned and written out. So thus, we've decided over here at Blender Tech that I'm going to be focusing somewhat mostly on 2.73 features where applicable with today's tips and tricks. First of all, I want to share some tips and tricks that some users on YouTube showed me actually and gave me permission to share, and the ones that I found interesting. And being is the fact that I want Blender Tech to be a community driven website, I'd like to share this small collection first. So to begin with the user submitted tips, I'll call them. So a really quick one, Addition Cherry mentioned that when I said that when you add a new object, what I suggested is under user preferences to enable under editing align to view, so that I'll save that setting right now. So if I delete all these, if I'm in this view and I add a cube, it'll be aligned directly to where I'm facing, just like that. But what he suggested, and which I've actually decided on a long time ago to change to, is to actually stick with align to world. However, when you add a new object, so I'm going to add a cube, I can do the same thing by either in the operators panel right here or F6 to bring up the floating operators panel. If you don't have the T toolbar open, you can just hit F6 and there's the align to view option to do the exact same thing. So he just brought that up and I thought that was a good point. Bringing some 2.73 stuff into view here, on the idea of doing grease pencil animations, I was using a plane. You can see I just have a plane that's got a pure white material here, and from top view I was essentially using it as a canvas to draw whatever I had wanted on here, you know. And so that's what I was doing originally to do my grease pencil animations, and then I would select something and do whatever with it, and so on and so forth. But what Ron Hicks suggested is instead to go to your world background and just set it to pure white, and then you can go to material mode and use the new option called under display world background. And so if I get rid of my plane now, I have to get out of grease pencil mode here. So if I get rid of my plane here, you can see that basically your background can become your canvas, and that also gives you a nice grid to work with. So he mentioned that as well. And then you can also render out your and then you can obviously also render out your animation or image just like that. So that was a neat little trick that he mentioned that I thought was pretty cool. Now, Lucas Debita came up with a few tips and tricks as well. So I was talking about how when you had multiple objects, if you were working on one and stuff was getting in the way or whatever, you can always hit numpad / and it brings you into local view, which gets rid of all other objects, but it doesn't actually hide them. And then you just hit forward numpad / and they come right back, but you're still in edit mode. So just like that. However, he mentioned that if you had something selected, say this face I have selected on my subdivided cube, you can just hit Shift H, which hides everything except for the selection. So he mentioned how it's kind of like a local view in edit mode, so you just work on that part of the selection in your object. So you can then go and say grab it or whatever, and then you hit Alt H to unhide the rest. So it's hiding everything except the selection is what that does. So yeah, just kind of a different way of doing things that I thought was kind of interesting. The user Grins Gold and me were talking about how in the node editor you can frame nodes using the Node Wrangler add-on, and you can also give them titles and stuff and whatever. But we were talking about colors and such for certain parts of nodes, and how sometimes it can get hard to see. But he mentioned how in the user preferences, if you go to themes and then hit node editor, there's all sorts of options in here, obviously, but he mentioned specifically the theme space settings, how you can set like header text and text highlight and the title text. So if I change the title text to say bright white, that's obviously a lot easier to see on the stock background. Or if you have nodes that are a different color, you can change, which one is it? Some of these you can change it so it's a lot easier to see. I haven't played with this too much, but yeah, basically you can change the nodes to be easier to see. So that was just another little thing that he mentioned that I thought again was useful. I've now gone and screwed up my theme. I'll have to reset that, but it's always good to reset your settings on a new version anyway and start fresh, I find. Anyways, continuing on. Lucas DeBita was also talking about, you can obviously go, top views, front view, right view, left view, bottom view, whatever, but he was saying how he uses a different method. What he does is when he's rotating views with the middle mouse button, just like this, when you're tumbling the view, he uses Alt to snap the view. Now, yes, snapping the view is, it's actually used more in a lot of different programs like Maya and such, but he does that to snap the views very quickly using just the mouse. That way you don't have to reach your arm all the way over to the other side of your keyboard to hit a button. Instead, you just, because usually your hands are on the left side of the keyboard, for scale, rotate, grab, A for all, shift, control, alt, right? So as you're tumbling, you just hit alt and you can snap to top, you can snap to you have to press middle mouse button then alt, but then you can snap to front, you can snap to right, you can snap to left, and you can also snap to 45-degree angles. And I believe that's adjustable too. I'm not 100% sure. I can't remember offhand. Now, I haven't tested this out 100% for sure, so don't blame me if it doesn't work in 2.73, but Lucas also said how under sampling, you have a seed here, which obviously changes the amount of noise in image. So let's say I rendered this out with just 2 samples, let's say. I should get a fairly noisy image. You can see the noise obviously on the shadow, right? But if I change the seed and re-render it, I'll get a different pattern of noise because the seed changes. So what he said is if you type in pound frame, so it's obviously added a driver here because we have a purple, because it's highlighted purple. So I believe if we go under the graph editor, under drivers, yeah, so I have a driver for the seed now, and obviously I could adjust this driver all I wanted. And check out my drivers 101 video if you want. I spent, I think, 45 minutes basically describing how drivers work and how to use drivers, and so this makes more sense to me now how it works, but I didn't at the time. So basically what's happening is every single frame gets a different seed value, as you can see by the curve here. So he was talking about doing animations, and so you get less noise. Basically, you can use less samples, but you get less noise overall if you have an animation, because frame 1 gets this value, frame 2 gets this value, frame 3 gets this value, and so on and so forth. So you can see the seed here is changing, and I can obviously change the math here. So the expression is frame, but I could go frame plus var, and I could add a var being some property, the cube's location or whatever. So I could make some like I could say the camera's X location. So now the driver value is 8.5 481, so I'm getting very randomized values essentially as I go up on the frames, up or through the frames, scrub through the frames. You can see the different values I get. So that, yeah, basically what he's saying is it gets you less noise when you're rendering an animation while using less samples, so you can render faster. So yeah, kind of neat. I didn't think of using drivers in that way ever, but it definitely is something you can do, because you can obviously add drivers to basically any value as far as I know. So yeah, that one was another one he mentioned. Now this may not be an actual tip or trick, and I'm going to link to the .blend file in the description, but I wanted to show the power of object constraints versus setting up an actual armature. So I've hidden the armature, and I could have set up an armature something like this to do something similar, and set up some sort of maybe inverse kinematics or whatever. But either way, I wanted to show you how object constraints can be very useful. So basically what happens is when I rotate this main gear along the Y, everything else rotates along with it. And then in the end we have this little, you could call it a connecting rod almost, that tracks to a point down here. So basically the worm gear copies the rotation of the main gear. This little circle hub thing copies the rotation of the worm gear, and this little pin copies the rotation of the circle, but offset to the edge, and it limits its location so that it doesn't go moving all around. And the same with the connecting rod, it limits the rotation, or its rotation is limited completely so that it only moves. It doesn't rotate in any ways, but it tracks towards this point. So by using just a couple object constraints, we're able to set up this, I wouldn't say complex, but we're able to set up this interesting little rig. So all I have to do is animate the gear to have everything work. So all I have to do is insert a Lockrot scale for the gear as it sits right here, move forward some amount of frames, and then I'm just going to rotate the gear along the Y, say a certain amount, I don't know, negative 1440 degrees, and then I'm going to insert another Lockrot scale keyframe, and if we hit play, you'll see it works the whole rig just by animating that one single object. So yeah, pick apart this .blend. It's a simple rig, but it's kind of interesting. So yeah, pick it apart. I just wanted to introduce some object constraints to you in my tips and tricks. I've started a series on object constraints called Intermediate Rigging, where we go through all the different object constraints to create rigs versus just using armatures. So I just wanted to show this one or I just wanted to show you guys this one to kind of show it off. So yeah, if you're interested, download the .blend and play with this, and see if you pick up any tips or tricks through that by playing with the object constraints. Play with the settings, change them, whatever. It's a little thing I'm going to share with you. Not to get off topic too much. But so let's get on to some Blender 2.73 things I want to mention, just so that everybody's aware of how they work and aware of where they are. So you could go and watch my video where I go over the features, but basically under display now you have world background, so that is going to display in the 3D viewport whatever world background you've set under the world settings, whether it be an image, whatever. Under materials, under settings, you have viewport specularity, so when you go into material mode, you are able to see the specularity from lights. It doesn't show up in pure white so well here, but if I changed it maybe to bright green, maybe we would see it slightly. Not so much, no. But yeah, basically it is there. We have viewport specularity now that makes it look a lot better. You can see if I drop this over here, it's hard to see the difference. But yeah, we do have viewport specularity in the 3D viewport now, so the 3D viewport will look a lot more like an actual the actual rendering. Maybe I have to have a glossy shader on here. I'm not 100% sure offhand. And also, under the grease pencil, we have the new edition of editing grease pencils. I don't think I went over this at the beginning. I forget already. But if you hit enable editing, you can now select points. The grease pencil system works on a point system, so I can grab points on the grease pencil. You can see it's attached to this object right now, so that's why I had to tab into edit mode. So I can grab grease pencil points. I can grab 2 and I can scale them. I can rotate them, and there's all these other things in here. So yeah, you can enable editing on grease pencil strokes now. So yeah, that's something that's in there. I wanted to mention full screen mode, which is very useful. So before we had Alt F11, which was full screen like this, which you could, the hotkey was also Shift Space to get you slightly more full screen. So let me just go Alt F11 to get us back. So this is your normal view. You could also, so Shift Space was the full screen mode we had before, like that, and the other hotkey was Control up and down to get the same thing. But we now have Alt F10, which gets you this extreme full screen. And if you hover your mouse over here, you can either hit Alt F10 or you can hit this button up here to get out of it. But you have this full screen, and if you hit Alt F9 while in this view, you do get your header bar back if you don't know the hotkeys for all the things in here. So I just wanted to mention that as well. Like I said, these aren't necessarily tips and tricks, but I just wanted everyone to be aware of how certain things work in 2.73. Under the sequencer, the video sequencer editor, if I open up a video, 2 things: you can take strips, and when you grab them to change where they are in frames, if you hold down Control, they now snap. And now it's context sensitive to where your mouse is. So if I put my mouse cursor right here and then hit G to grab and then hit Control, you'll see it snaps to the end. So it's context sensitive to your mouse position. The other thing is the sequencer now has this option, use backdrop, and so you can now see what frame you are on in your movie. So that's very cool. It works similar to the node editor when you're compositing. So I just wanted to just mention that if any of you use the sequencer to do any video editing in Blender, I just wanted to let you know that that's been added on in 2.73. One last thing I'll mention about 2.73 before we move on to a couple other things is freehand cut. So if I subdivide this cube a bunch of times, so we have a bunch of geometry to work with, and bring out my knife tool with K. I want to get out of material mode. That's quite annoying. Oh, now I got a material. I'll just get rid of it. Alright, so if we bring out our knife tool, usually you would just make polygonal cuts, but now we can make completely freehand cuts, and this is most evident when you have more geometry like this. So you can make cuts in absolutely whatever organic shape you want. But the other thing is, okay, maybe I want to finish cutting there. Normally I would have to manually go all the way to the end and complete the cut just like that, and then I would click. But now I can just be at my point wherever I want to finish and double click, and it finishes the cut for me. It closes the cut. So that's very, very cool. That's another new addition. So yeah, I just wanted to just mention that quickly as the last of 2.73 things I'm going to go over. I wanted to also quickly bring up drivers. I made a video called Drivers 101 where like I said before, where I basically explained, not 100%, but I explained enough to where you could fully understand how to use drivers by watching the whole video. But for those of you that don't have the time out there or haven't seen it, I want to quickly show you how drivers work if you don't know. If you do, you can just skip over this part. So if we select our cube, we have all our location, rotation, scale, and dimension options here. So this is just a good example of values to add drivers to. But of course, you can add drivers to anything. I can take my camera and I can add drivers to the focal length. I can add drivers to my resolution, whatever. But in this case, I'm going to take this cube here, and I'm going to take its Z location, so up and down in world space. In fact, let me turn on the display of the Z. So I'm going to affect its Z location with a driver. So all I'm going to do is hover over Z and right click and hit add single driver, and you'll see it's turned purple. You might have seen this before by accident. You might have done that by pressing D, and you've had something turn purple, and that's because you've added a driver to it accidentally. So I've added a driver to my Z location here. Let me get rid of the timeline and let me break this window open, and I'll bring up the dope sheet and go into, or sorry, I'll bring up the graph editor and bring up the driver panel. So we have the Z location on cube 001, and so if I open up the N panel now under view properties and click on Z location, sorry, because we didn't need view properties, we don't need active F curve, we don't need active keyframe. Under drivers, we have all this information here. So what can we do with this? How do drivers work? Well, here's what you can do. We have, I'm just going to talk about scripted expression because it's the most powerful. So what you can do is you can do math. So we can do things like 3 plus 1. So we get 4. So you can see the values changed to 4. Yes, very obvious. We could have just done that by hand. But you'll see if I try to grab it along the Z now, it's not going to move anywhere. You'll see down at the bottom here, it's trying to move in the UI, but it's not moving at all. That's because it's now controlled by a driver. But why is this useful? Well, that's because, let's take cube, the original cube here, and let's do something with it to affect the second cube. So what Blender does when you add a driver is it adds a stock variable called var, but you can call it anything. I'm just going to call it, say, cube, so that I know what it is. It's going to be something that has to do with the original cube called a cube. So it's going to be a transform channel. So that's X location, X rotation, X scale. You can obviously understand what those are. So I'm going to use the Y location of cube to affect the Z location of cube 001. So how I do that is I just type in cube. So you'll see that since cube is, since cube is negative 3.375 units away from 0, which is, the origin, cube 001 is now negative 3.375 units down along the z-axis. So you'll see if I grab this cube along the y, you'll see how it affects the other cube. And so that's in the most simplest and quickest of terms how drivers work. And you'll see I can grab it anywhere, but it's only the y location that affects it. And so you can set up very, very, very complex setups doing this. And of course, we can go back here and we can add more math. We can go cube plus pi or whatever, right? So, and you can add multiple variables. So you can add another variable, and you could say we could have the I'm just gonna stick with transform channel because it's the easiest. We could take, the camera's X location and add it to it. And so this one's named var by default, so I could go cube plus var, which gives me a value of 4.106 because it's taking the camera's X location, it's taking the cube's Y location and adding it all together to affect cube 001's Z location. So hopefully that quickly describes drivers to you guys, because I know a lot of people are like, I never knew how to use them, but now I do after watching my Drivers 101 video. So I wanted to kind of bring this up just to get that out there. Anyways, that is pretty much all I have. The one last thing I wanted to add is, let me just start a new file up here that I completely forgot about, is people were having issues with doing grease pencil animations. So let me just let me create a quick little grease pencil, not an animation but a scene. So I'm just gonna draw some junk with the grease pencil. Go to the next frame and draw some more, go to the next frame, draw some more, and so on and so forth. So we now have a grease pencil animation. But people were having issues because if I hit play, well, that's pretty darn quick. So basically was quite hard to animate stuff when your frame rate is moving so quickly. And so what people didn't realize is you can set a custom frame rate, and so you can do something like 2 frames per second, and that allows you to make your grease pencil animations more usable because you can make it a lot slower of an animation, obviously. And building on that, I want to just also mention onion skinning, which shows you previous and next frames. I don't know exactly which is which. Let's see here. Next, previous. So next is the darker one, previous is the lighter one. So onion skinning helps you do animations with the grease pencil tool too. I haven't mastered grease pencil animations. I've barely done anything with them, but I just figured out some of the basics. I also made a video on that, kind of like the basics of grease pencil animations. But I just wanted to mention, onion skinning, and also the fact that you can set custom frames per second to make it easier to do your first animations when you're just learning, so that you're not stuck at, say, the lowest, which is what, 24 frames per second basically, which if I hit play you can see that that's quite fast to have to do animations. You'd have to be doing tons of frames to get anything that's viewable. But anyways, I'm gonna leave it off there for now, and next week will be a lot better because now we're out of the holidays and everybody's back to work, including myself. So again, thanks for watching from the team here at BlenderTech.com. If you enjoyed this video or learned something, consider liking it and consider subscribing for more videos. We're on Twitter at twitter.com/blender_tech and Facebook at facebook.com/blendertechpage, all one word. If you dislike this video for some reason, don't just hit the thumbs down button and leave. Instead, please leave a comment that tells us what you didn't like, or if it's private, email us at info@blendertech.com. That way we can continually improve our videos based on your community input. That is the core goal of what we wanted when we started Blender Tech, to have a community-driven website and videos. We also take requests for tutorials and call for helps. You may have seen that I've done a lot of call for help videos lately, and it's starting to actually become a point where I'm getting overwhelmed. But if you're having troubles with something and you'd like a visual explanation, a video of it, just give me an email or send us a comment on YouTube, and if we have the time and the ability, we will definitely put a video up for you, or at the very least try to explain it in a quick comment or email. Anyways, see you next time, and remember, create your way.